Much of the process of programming in any language is doing basic math operations. And we have several different operators that are used in conducting math expressions. The first two of addition and subtraction are obviously familiar to you. The example here of xyz equals 5 plus 7, xyz being a variable, would have the resulting value of 12. 5 plus 7 is 12. Same with subtraction, xyz equals 24 minus 6. xyz would be 18, subtracting 6 from 24. For multiplication, pretty much every programming language uses an asterisk as the multiplication symbol. That would be a shift 8 on the keyboard. So 5 times 7 would be 35. The division operation is simply the forward slash, and so 7 divided by 2 would give us 3.5. Now, a lot of languages have an integer division or a way of conducting integer division if they don't have a specific operators. In ActionScript, we have the math class, and there is a method called floor as part of that math class that we can use to get an integer division. Integer division simply drops off the remainder. There is no decimal. So it would be the lowest integer, actually the highest integer below the value. So math.floor of 7 divided by 2 would be 3. We drop off or truncate the 0.5 or the half. We'll talk more about the math class in another video shortly. Then we have something that's probably not familiar to you, and that's called a modulus operation. The modulus operation gives us the remainder of an integer division. For example, 25 modulus 7 yields a result of 4. Well, how do we get that? Well, if we divide 7 into 25, 7 goes into 25 3 times. And we subtract 21, and we're left with a remainder of 4. That is the result of the modulus operation. It simply is what is not evenly divisible by the operand. Now you may wonder, why would you ever need that? You will find there's lots of times in programming we want to know what is left over. In fact, our next assignment dealing with converting pennies into dollars and quarters and dimes, the modulus operation will become a very key operation for you to use in the accomplishment of that assignment. Then we have increment and decrement operators. These are unary operators in that there's not two parts of it. We're simply adding one to a variable or subtracting one from a variable. So if xyz was 4 and we issued the statement xyz plus plus, plus plus being the increment operator, the new value of xyz would be 5. If we issued the operation of xyz minus minus, the new result of xyz would go from 4 to 3. And then we have what's called compound operators. So in the increment and decrement, we would add or subtract 1. We can also specify a plus equals, and we're basically the same as saying xyz equals xyz plus some value. So in the example here of xyz equals 5 and then xyz plus equals 2, we would add 2 to the value of xyz, and xyz would become 7. If we had a minus equals, xyz would become 3. We could use the multiplication symbol. So if I had xyz equals 5 and then xyz times equals 2, xyz would now be 10. And I can also use a modulus operation on that, combining that into a compound expression. So let's create an application that uses some basic math. I want to find the total number of calories of a food product based on its nutritional values of the grams of fat, protein, and carbs. So I have here 3 input boxes. The first one's called fat_txt. Next one I've named protein_txt, and then carbs_txt. I have a dynamic text box for our output named calories_txt, and then a button named calculate_btn. So when I click this button, I want to get these 3 values, place them in variables, and then use those variables in a calculation and show the result here in our dynamic text box. So I'm going to add a layer, which is going to be my actions layer. And I'm going to open up the actions. And I need to create an event listener for our button. And I'll use a function called getCalories, and we need to write that function. It's not going to return anything, so return type is void. I'm going to create some variables: fats, proteins, carbs, and I'll use cals for calories. And these are all going to be number data type variables, and so I can specify them all on the same line. Fats is going to equal, I want to take the number value of fat underscore txt.text, and that is a string value, so I need to convert that to a number, and that's what the number method does there. I'm going to assign that to the fats variable. We'll do the same thing with proteins. And our carbs. And then our mathematical calculation to figure out the number of calories is going to be the fats times 9 plus the proteins times 4 plus the carbs times 4. And then we'll display the result in our calories underscore txt text box in the text property. And I'm going to concatenate here the phrase total calories plus the value of cals. Now that's a number, and it's expecting a string value in the text property, so I need to convert that to a string. I'm going to click the check mark here to check the syntax, make sure there's no issues, and then let's run our program. And the result is 285 calories. Let's look at another example. In this one, we'll use the modulus operation. I have an application where the user enters a certain total of inches, and we want to have it calculate the equivalent number of feet and inches remaining. So I have three text boxes here. This one is an input text box, and it is named total inches underscore txt. This one's named feet underscore txt and inches underscore txt. We're going to create an actions layer, and I will name it actions, and we'll bring up the actions editor. So we will take our total inches underscore txt text box. I'm going to add an event listener, and rather than using a mouse click, I'm going to use a change event. So whenever the user changes the text that's in the text box, it's going to trigger this event listener. And I'll call my function convert inches to feet. We'll go ahead and write that function. And we want E to be of type event, and it's not returning things, so it'll be void. And I'm going to create a couple variables here. And I mentioned earlier we want to use meaningful names, but in very short programs you can get by with very simple variables. And so I'm just going to use fi and ti for feet, inches, and total inches. And those are all going to be integers. So my variable ti is going to equal total inches underscore txt.text. But since that is a string, I need to convert that to an integer. So we can take the int method and put total inches underscore txt.text inside the parentheses. My feet are going to equal math.floor. We're going to do an integer division here of ti divided by 12. And then the remaining inches would be ti, and here we can use a modulus operation, so percent 12. That's going to give us the remainder. We need to output those values, so feet underscore txt.text equals the value of f, and I want to convert that to a string. Yes, needs to be capitalized. And we'll do the same thing for I, converting that to a string and placing it in our inches underscore txt text box. Everything seems to check out. Let's go ahead and run it. And if I change this value, change to 24, I get 2 feet 0 inches, 27, 2 feet 3 inches, 128, I get 10 feet 8 inches. So that's a great example of using the modulus operator to find the remainder of a value, the division value. And you also saw there demonstrated just using the change event for a text box.